How y'all doing? Welcome to the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host Cody Potter. How y'all doing, man? We're going to kind of go over a little bit of a film breakdown from the Chargers. We're going to talk about some trade deadline things as we kind of go through that. Little bit of some takeaways from college because I want to incorporate that into the trade deadline. There were a lot of things that I really saw from college football that I really liked, and just college football is the lifeblood of your team's organization, man. So as we kind of go through it, man, there's a lot of things that the Chargers were doing on tape that the Green Bay Packers they did and they had success with against the Commanders week 2, the Thursday night kind of blowout game. The Chargers were running a very similar defense to that, man. They ran really tight man, and then they ran that off shell zone where they just run layers across the field, man. And the biggest difference for me that I noticed in the game was Bill. Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt, man. The biggest thing I kept saying when I was breaking down the tape from the Green Bay game after the Green Bay loss was I was like, man, the truth is teams are dropping into that shell. You got to be able to run against it. And I didn't think that we committed to the run game. That was our lowest run total of the season. I've been calling for Bill pretty much all season long. I just think he's the most explosive. He's the most dynamic player. I understand the veteran coaching staff side of it. They like to get players. You can tote the rock, but if you can't block, then it's all schematic, So you can't have no weakness in your game. They can't just know that they're going to hand him the ball because he's on the field, and then when we take him off the field, they're going to throw the ball. It's all schematic. As we've seen the season go along, we've seen Bill improve in the pass blocking department. We've seen him be more impactful each and every game, and he was very impactful in this Chargers game. This is that zone coverage that I was talking about, where you're just layering across the field. You're dropping four across in the mid to short, and then you're keeping the safeties, everything 3 over top, everything in front of you. And if they're gonna run that type of shell defense, you got to be able to run the ball. But when they are in that defense and it is a pass coverage, man, the quarterback has to be able to make the play, whether it's a receiver sitting down in the zone, the tight end sitting down in the zone, the quarterback stepping up in the pocket and taking the platform off script. You have to be able to do these things. Jayden Daniels is a very good quarterback, man. As far as his rookie year to this year, you're seeing all the reasons why he was the offensive rookie of the year, why going forward he has a chance to be in the MVP conversation year in and year out, as long as he stays healthy. The other biggest takeaway from the Chargers game was the offensive line play. The offensive line kept them clean. They are doing a really good job since Breece Hall has been in the rotation. The run blocking and the pass blocking department has really excelled. And those are the things that you like to see. You also see Debo stepping up in the receiver role. He's being more critical. Luke McCaffrey making plays over the top. That's got to be a staple of this offense, man. If you're going to be able to run the ball, you're going to be able to do all these things. You're going to run play action. You have to hit the deep shots when they're there. You don't take a lot of them because we're not very dynamic in that department. It's not like we have a Deshaun Jackson or something like that, but we do have Jalen Lane, a fast wide receiver, and then you can also win over the top with size, which is the way Luke McCaffrey does it, with a physical presence, being able to catch the ball through contact, which we did. And that play really, in my opinion, is the staple of us turning this season around and the offense starting to click. It really did start to click after that. Which leads me to another thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the trade deadline, the trade rumors. We're a couple weeks out from it. There's talking about being in a lot of trades. You got the Breece Halls, you got Chris Olave in New Orleans. You have a ton of pass rushers. So I'm bringing these players up because, they've been rumoring Breece Hall to us all offseason, kind of thing, because running back was a question. Well, I don't think that's a question anymore. I think we all know what we have in Bill. So we can pretty much throw that one in the garbage. The other reason I had brought up Breece Hall and the offensive line play and the difference that it's having on our season, through the breakdown of talking about Jayden was now, you got fans talking about, well, we could trade Brandon Coleman and things like that. And, we could. The offensive line to date has been healthy. You're going to get Sam Cosmi back. That's going to open up another spot. So in the end, could you trade Coleman? Yes. Would I trade Brandon Coleman? No. Yes, we would like to recoup, in my opinion, recoup more draft picks going into this next class. I am always a draft and develop type of person. That's how I believe you build the best team. You can supplement the roster in free agency. When you're very, very close to contending, you can make that big splash signing if the player is worthy of the contract and he's available to you. Most of the time, that player is not available in free agency, so you do what Washington did this offseason. You trade draft picks for a Laramie Tunsil, or you trade a value asset, which is like a fifth rounder for, a Deebo Samuel, who is a proven commodity, a little bit older, playing into a contract year, having a little bit of whatever going on in his previous stop, and you make that trade. And, as we can see, Deebo Samuel has been a value. My biggest thing with the trade deadline and things like this is, everybody knocks Marshawn Lattimore for, it's evident, he's given up catches, and when we were losing, he's been targeted. Well, last year we traded for this guy, he was injured. Then you add in the fact that he didn't have any offseason in our system. We didn't get very much impact from him. But now you fast forward a year, as fans, we hear the names. Chris Olave. Would I love Chris Olave on Washington? Of course I would. Chris Olave is a hell of a player. He's a dynamic route runner. Really good hands. Honestly, outside of the hospital balls, and if it wasn't for all the concussions and things like that, I probably would be higher on, moving for Chris Olave, even if you have to pay him. Do you have to pay him are you going to pay him in the neighborhood of Garrett Wilson, his running mate at Ohio State, who just got paid? No, because Chris Olave hasn't had that type of impact. Either way, he's still a first-round pick, so he's still going to get paid like a first-round pick on that second deal. Being a younger player, he's going to make hella money. So trading for Chris Olave, what does that leave you with? Well, if you look at Terry McLaurin, who is on he's definitely up there in the escalators and things like that. And then the incentives really take his contract to around $30 million a season, which would, if he's healthy, which this year I don't think you're going to get there, which most of his money for this year is completely guaranteed, so it doesn't really change this year. But moving forward, you have a 30-year-old, 31-year-old next season playing on $30 million a year contract. So then you have Deebo Samuel, who has been probably our best offensive player outside of Bill and anybody on the offensive line. Realistically, I think our best offensive player is Laramie Tunsil. He's really, really showing why you make that type of trade week in and week out. He's been consistent. He's just been a really good football player for this team. Then you have Tyler Biadasz, who's very consistent. You have Josh Connolly Jr., who took his lumps week 1 to week 2. Week 3, he really started to settle it down. You've seen him the last 2 weeks really elevate his play, not going up against Max Crosby and those type of guys. He's truly coming along really, really nice as a rookie. But if you were looking collectively, the playmakers always stand out. I would say Deebo Samuel has been our best offensive player. Now you're starting to see Bill making another impact. You're seeing Luke McCaffrey starting to step up. And I think it will start to, everything will start to level out. And you will see Laramie Tunsil still be there. You'll see Deebo still be there. You're going to see Bill be there. But I think Deebo is our best player. You're going to probably re-sign Deebo at the end of this year, and he's going to be an aged receiver. He's going to be up there in 30. So what does that say? We need to get younger at the position. So Chris Olave does make a little bit of sense, but you have the injury history. So when you factor in concussions and things like that, as Washington fans, we all should remember Jordan Reed. Super, super talented, man. You don't dispute the talent. But trading for Chris Olave, you're looking at a very similar injury risk. Do I trust Jayden Daniels not to throw hospital balls? A lot better, and keep him a little bit safer than the quarterback play that New Orleans has had throughout his career? Of course I do. I think Jayden Daniels is a very good quarterback. He's very smart in his reads, but you still got to throw the ball in the windows sometimes. Chris Olave has had a concussion history. It's a big risk. So as much as you love the player, I had a blue chip grade on Chris Olave, and he has been that player when healthy on that field. But again, teams are only going to get rid of players because they have something New Orleans looking long term, rebuilding that roster, rebuilding that team from pretty much scratch. You're giving up more draft capital for a player that has injury history at a position that we do need to get younger in. There's wide receivers in this draft. Would I prefer to maybe go that route? Are any of them probably grading out as high as Chris Olave was coming out? No, but they also don't have the concussion history or things like that, and you're getting the rookie window contract control. So that also is very, very important, is more valuable to this team, I think, going forward, because you're going to be paying the Laramie Tunsels this offseason. You're going to be paying the Debos this offseason. You're re-ing up Daron Payne, because Daron Payne is your best defensive player. Outside of Mikey Sammerstill and Trey Amos, in my opinion. And then, Frankie Louvu, he's a stud. You're going to have to find something to do with Bobby Wagner, whether it is Jordan McGee, who I think has earned the right to have his role increased, as I think it will throughout this season, without completely, you're not going to bench Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner's a stud. He's the quarterback of this defense, but, you do need Jordan McGee to get the playing time, to be able to develop and things like that. The other position that I wanted to talk about was the edge rusher market, because Trey Hendrickson, through the whole offseason, he's been available for trade, whatever. Then they locked him up for this year just to get him through the season so he could get on the field. Well, the Bengals, with Joe Burrow being out, we all know where that is. Max Crosby, you hear about him every offseason because of the state of the Raiders. Does he go play for a contender? Did they finally walk away from that and do a whole complete rebuild? Because with Geno Smith, nothing behind him, there's a reason why I said I really thought the Raiders would have been really smart to take Jalen Milroe. I think it would still be too early to put Jalen Milroe in that situation, but I think Jalen Milroe had really high level upside for down the road. They didn't make that pick, so again, the Raiders are going to be starting over from scratch at some point. Do they trade Max Crosby? What do you give up in that type of trade? That's always the cost, whether it's Trey Hendrickson, whether it's Walker down in Jacksonville, and then Jalen Phillips from Miami, another team starting over. I mean, honestly, if there was a player that you're looking around the league for me, from Miami, because of the state of their franchise, they're going to be starting over. Who did they get rid of? Is it the Jalen Phillips? Everybody was talking about Tyreek Hill. Well, Tyreek Hill was never really an interest to me, because paying a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver when we already have 30-year-old plus wide receivers, another big contract, it just never even schematically fit, what you're trying to do, like, long-term for this team. A player that I will say from Miami that I would be interested in, but of course I think the cost is way too high for this player, but he gives you that element that we do not have at wide receiver, is the speed. I mean, just the complete game-changing speed, and then has the skill set underneath and all the things, and that would be Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle in his own right comes with his own injury history and things like that, the ankle and things like that at Alabama, and he's had things in the NFL too. So again, if you're making the trade at the trade deadline, there's a reason the team is willing to walk away from them. They're either getting exceedingly high value for the player, or they know the player is not in their long-term plans. The player's not in their long-term plans because either they have a long-term injury concern or something like that, or they're already an aged veteran. We have enough aged veterans on this team. So, like I said, Jaylen Waddle was the only player that really fit for me in the look ahead, as far as how he plays, how he would fit into this offense, the things that he would add to this offense that we don't already have, and the age and the fact that he already has a contract. So it's not like you have to try to rework the deal or try to, do like the Chris Olave, who's in the last year of his rookie contract, where you're going to be paying this guy a big extension. Jaylen Waddle would already be coming in on a contract that he has, so you don't have to rework it. So again, that's really my thing about the trade deadline, and that's going to kind of propel me into the next segment of this show, which is a little bit of the college breakdowns and the reason why I don't think that you do make any of these trades. And the biggest reason I don't think you make any of these trades, I'm just going to put on clips from one of the games this weekend that was really, really critical that I watched, the Oregon-Indiana game. Two completely different schools. And this is what you're looking for when you're looking for drafting and developing. Well, if you look at the offensive line and how they're grading out in Indiana, they were going up against a defensive front that's grading out very, very similar. And, vice versa from the other side. Oregon has a really good offensive line going up against Indiana's defensive front with Kamara and all them guys. So when you're watching this Oregon game, you have a school that's riddled with 5, 4-star, 3-star talent. I mean, that's Oregon. That player right there, he's an absolute monster. Washington, the defensive tackle, he's one of the most explosive interior defensive linemen, honestly, that you're going to see in college football. Reminds me a lot of Deron Payne coming out, like that 230 build, just, relentless motor, super explosive off with the first step and things like that, and then the power to back it up. And he's just a very, very disruptive player. There's a lot of really, really good talent that's coming out of Oregon. Then you look at across the other side, you look at Indiana. They are not riddled with 5-star. They have no 5 stars on their roster. But they do have some 4 stars. They have 3 stars. And the biggest thing about them is they're a very veteran team. They have either graduate seniors, they have redshirt seniors, and true seniors. And they are riddled with them. It's almost every position as you look across the board, whether it's offense and defense. These guys are the type of guys that come in, they work their ass off, they play, that came in from the transfer portal, they wanted a chance to be on a team to contend. Indiana showed last year that they would be very, very good contenders, and it followed. They picked up more players in the transfer portal. Elijah Surratt, number 13, the wide receiver from Indiana. He is everything that you talk about when you say, give the guy time. He works his ass off behind the scenes, develops the nuances of his game. This is an NFL wide receiver playing in college football right now. The way that he works, is he Jeremiah Smith? No, he's not a 5-star. Is he Marvin Harrison Jr.? No, he's not a 5-star. Is he Jaylen Waddle or, all these guys? No, he's not. He's not that 4.2, 4.3 speed guy. What he is super refined, really solid hands. Has developed his hands and his catch rate every year in college. His yards of separation as his route running has improved. Like I said, he is a guy that is playing pro level and pro style ball all the way right now in college football. Elijah Surratt is going to make a GM look very, very smart because he's probably going to go in the 3rd round, somewhere in that range in this class. And a team is just going to get a true A-plus level ball player, a true competitor, the type of guy that you want in your locker room. Is he a 1A? I don't think so. Does that mean he can't be that in the NFL? No, he very much can be. I don't think he's just a possession guy. I think he's got everything you want from the wide receiver position. He blocks. He runs hard on every play, even the plays that aren't designed to go to him. He does everything that you could ask for a wide receiver, and he's going to make a GM look very, very smart. This is why I don't think you make the trades, and this is why I always look to college football to be the lifeblood of your organization. When you can get a player like this in the 2nd, 3rd round, no, does Elijah Surratt help us this season after the trade deadline? No, he doesn't. But when you're giving up this draft capital for these players that have certain things, certain medicals and all that in the NFL already, and they already have NFL miles on them, you're about to pay that guy. Everybody wanted Marshawn Lattimore last year, and, fast forward a year, because it's been almost about a year since the trade at this point. 3 weeks ago, everybody wanted Marshawn Lattimore off the team. He was very, very solid in the Chargers game, so you're not hearing it quite as much. But when you're making trades for these players, it's not always going to pan out, and then you want it to pan out instantly. That's why you're making this trade at the trade deadline. But getting these players up to speed to where they're really going to impact this roster, it's really, really hard to do. Yes, it was harder for Marshawn Lattimore last year with a hamstring injury to have that type of impact on this team, but this year moving forward, it's always going to be a thing. He's always had this injury history. So the reason that I don't really like making these trades is because you're getting a younger player. You're getting a younger player on a rookie deal. You have more control. You get to develop that guy into your system and refine that guy's ability, or refine your system around that guy's ability, depending on what you're looking for. This wide receiver room needs to get younger. Now, that said, Luke McCaffrey, he's starting to show that the sky really is the limit for him. Is he Terry McLaurin? Is he Deebo Samuel? Is he Luke McCaffrey going forward? It's going to be whatever he is, but we know Luke McCaffrey's a worker. It's evident by the impact that he's had, even if it is only 1 or 2 or 3 plays a game. Last year it was 1 play every couple games. He's showing development signs. That's what you're really, really looking for. So do we really need wide receiver long term as much as we think we do? Who knows? That's the part of drafting and developing. Jaylen Lane coming in. I don't even think we've scratched the surface with him yet. I think we're about 3 or 4 weeks away from really seeing the impact, the consistent impact that I think Jaylen Lane is going to offer this team by the end of the season and moving forward from next year on. Because I think Jaylen Lane does give you something. I think he gives you something in the seam game. I think he gives you something in the slot game that we're just not very much capitalizing at this moment. But that's because Jayden Daniels has only played 3 games this season, and honestly, I think he's only getting better as this moves on, and that will improve as he develops a comfort with Jaylen Lane. But to say Jaylen Lane hasn't developed already, for Jayden Daniels, one of the most critical moments in the game was early in the game against the Chargers. He made that third down and 15, 16 pass to Jaylen Lane. To trust a rookie wide receiver like that on third down, that's a big moment for a quarterback, especially a young quarterback. We look at Jayden Daniels as this elite, truly special player because he is a truly gifted football player. But for a second-year quarterback, realistically, most guys don't make that throw to a 5'9" rookie coming out of Virginia Tech who only had 40-some catches last year. But it's the testament to the comfort level that they're developing in practice. So again, do we make trades? We all as fans, we hear the names. We can talk every name for this trade deadline. I mean, we could talk Jeffrey Simmons. Would I love Jeffrey Simmons? Of course I would love Jeffrey Simmons. Him, Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, and Daron Payne. That'd be a hell of a combination, man. But this isn't Madden, this is the thing. It's Madden. There's contractual obligations that you can only allocate so much cap space to certain positions throughout the roster. And I'm just telling you right now, the contract that Jeffrey Simmons is on, the contract that you're going to sign Daron Payne to at the end of the season, the contract that Javon Kinlaw is on, Johnny Newton on his rookie deal, the flexibility that you do actually get with Johnny Newton. You would rather draft another defensive tackle or bring in a solid veteran for a cheaper deal, almost in the Dietrich Wise kind of department that we, invested in at the edge position. So again, there's a lot of things that go into this. This is why you can't always make these trades. Like, yes, it's fun to talk about, and yes, it's very, very cool to think about Jeffrey Simmons or Chris Olave on this team going into the playoffs or something like that, looking forward. But realistically, it's cap management, it's asset management, it's knowing that this roster is older right now. You already have so many contracts that are going to break the bank at the end of this offseason. Do any of these trades really, really fit moving forward, like paying Chris Olave along with Laramie Tunsil or Deebo Samuel or whatever? I think if you made that trade, you'd already have to choose. So either way, one of your 5th-round picks or whatever you pay for Chris Olave, it's pretty much a wash because one of them isn't going to re-sign. Because you can't have 3 wide receivers. You just can't allocate that type of asset and that much financial structure into that wide receiver position, especially for 2 aged players, and then Chris Olave, who has an injury history, as we've talked about. So again, I think the best thing moving forward for this team is executing patience. Could you trade Brandon Coleman if you could recoup what you basically paid for drafted him at, a third? I think you consider it. There are teams that are really, really starving for offensive line because the injuries and all that. I mean, just look at the Chargers last week. I mean, the Chargers would probably give up just about anything for a quality offensive lineman to play on that team right now that's healthy. Because they have playoff aspirations and how good Justin Herbert is and how good they're playing around that offensive line. And Joe Alt will be back at some point. Like I said, they lost Rashawn Slater. But again, offensive line is a premium. Could you get a premium for Brandon Coleman? I'm sure you could because he has tackle experience, he has guard experience. But the cap flexibility that you get with this guy being a 3rd-round pick last year and having 2 more years on his deal after this season, I just don't think you walk away from that. I think the value is higher to this team. And as we saw with this team last year, Sam Cosmi is an amazing player. And we stayed generally healthy last year, but we haven't really been healthy this year at all, as far as like our top tier players. I mean, Terry's been out. Deebo Samuel's been carrying the injury designation through weeks. Bill's had the knee, week 2 and week 3 going into it, So, I mean, it's not that they've missed time, but it is football. So, I mean, realistically, I think Brandon Coleman is more valuable to this team, even though you have Wiley, even though you have Allegretti. Allegretti didn't play really good, so maybe you work a trade for a player like that. Are you recouping what you're going to recoup in the Brandon Coleman trade? No, but maybe that's a piece that you move. The reason I don't trade Brandon Coleman is because Sam Cosmi goes down, or Chris Paul goes down. Well, now you have Brandon Coleman to step into that position, who I think is better than the play that he's demonstrated so far this year. I don't think he was fully healthy when he came back, and I think Chris Paul really worked his ass off in practice and showed that he deserved that spot. Nothing against Brandon Coleman. I just think you had a player that showed that he was deserving of the role. Brandon Coleman was probably still struggling a little bit with injury, rushing himself back, trying to get out there because the season came along. And it just worked out so far that Chris Paul has played really, really good football next to Laramie Tunsil, and it just gelled. But moving forward, Chris Paul, you're either going to pay him this offseason or you're going to get handed over to or to Brandon Coleman. And that's where asset management comes in. And that's why I say it would be nice to recoup these draft picks if you're planning on maybe paying Chris Paul at a value veteran deal next to Laramie Tunsil. Make it work. I mean, maybe you do trade Brandon Coleman, and maybe you just draft another player in this draft, in the later rounds or something that you're going to, develop long term. So again, that's what I wanted to talk about with the trade deadline. Kind of want to go over Jayden Daniels and things like that. Tonight we play the Bears. It's blackout game, so it's going to be really cool seeing the stadium all dark and things like that. Just, I don't know. I think this is a really cool thing that the ownership is doing, getting fans invested in things like that. So we'll see what happens with this game because it's going to be a pivotal game. The Bears and Ben Johnson are all looking to rebound from last year as far as the way the games went when we played them. Ben Johnson in Detroit in the playoffs, and then, Caleb Williams last year with the Hail Mary, everybody knows. It's been a weird week of football. So, the Eagles lost, the Cowboys lost, the Giants got a dub, man. So, this is a very, very critical game as far as the standings for the NFC East. And honestly, having Jayden Daniels miss 2 games, to go 1-2 in those, or 1-1 in them games, you really, really need this game. This is a game you looked on the calendar earlier. You said, hey, we should win this game. Football's football. That's why it happens on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays that, you got to execute when it's your time. It's not won on paper. So I expect us to come out and look pretty good. I expect the Bears to come out and give us their best game. They're coming off a bye, so they're going to be fresh. Can they stop the run? I think they're going to be very hell-bent on trying to stop the run and Bill and making Jayden Daniels throw. Honestly, I think, their biggest asset is Jayden Daniels with the knee. They're going to try to probably get him off spot. Can Jayden Daniels beat him? I think he can. But that's why we play the games, because it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what team shows up and plays 60 minutes of football or more to, get this dub. So it's a big pivotal game for this team. I do appreciate you guys sticking around for the pod. Like, comment, whatever. I'll talk to you guys, be interactive with you if you do. Leave me a comment. This is the trade deadline is always something very exciting for fans. It's something that I want to get into, but talk about it from more of a team building situation, things like that. Because last year I was a proponent for trading for Marshawn Lattimore, and as fans we get excited for things like that, but I was talking about it more systematically because we didn't have the bodies at cornerback, not starting level, that you needed to go into the playoffs when it was very obvious that this team was going to go to the playoffs. I think this team is still growing, in this young season that, if talk to me in 3 weeks, I might have a different opinion for you based on what I'm hearing and things like that too. Based on some of these veterans, maybe the value that you get for them, maybe something does fit better. Maybe Jaylen Waddle is available. Maybe you get him cheaper than what I think he's going for. So, like I said, my opinion could change. But as of right now, going into the Chicago game, this is where I stand with the trade deadline and things like that. So again, I appreciate you guys sticking around for the pod. It's going to be an exciting Monday night game. Hopefully we get that dub. Ugly weather out here, but we got to get it, man. So seeing a blackout game in the weather, man, against a team like the Bears, that's what you want to see, man. Old school football. So again, thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip Podcast. It's your host, Cody Potter. Have a blessed Monday and a safe work week.